Travel is often synonymous with freedom, the joy of discovering new cultures, landscapes, and histories. But for people in India, one neighboring country represents a travel paradox. It's close geographically, culturally intertwined in many ways, yet it's effectively off-limits. That country is Pakistan. In today's video, we'll unravel why traveling from India to Pakistan is so restricted. From the echoes of a divided past to present-day politics, this story is a tapestry of history, geopolitics, and hope for reconciliation. So, buckle up. The intriguing question: what's off-limits and why? To answer this, let's first confront the obvious. Is there a legal ban on traveling to Pakistan? Not entirely. However, the restrictions are so stringent that for most Indians, visiting Pakistan remains a near impossible feat. Why is this the case? Historical ties and fractures, the backstory. To understand the present, we must journey into the past, a past etched with both unity and division. The roots of this travel restriction trace back to 1947, a year etched in the collective memory of the subcontinent. The British Empire's withdrawal from India left behind two nations, India and Pakistan. While independence was a moment of celebration, the partition triggered one of the largest mass migrations in human history. Over 15 million people crossed borders, leaving behind homes, memories, and sometimes loved ones. This was no amicable separation. Religious violence claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. It wasn't just borders that were drawn. It was a wedge between communities that had coexisted for centuries. Fast forward to the decades since, and the geopolitical divide has deepened. The countries have fought 4 wars: 1947, 1965, 1971, and 1999, over contentious issues, most notably the disputed region of Jammu and Kashmir. Political rhetoric on both sides often frames the other as an existential threat, creating an environment where ordinary citizens bear the brunt. The flip side: can Pakistanis visit India? Travel challenges between India and Pakistan are far from one-sided. Pakistani citizens face similarly restrictive procedures when attempting to visit India. Like their Indian counterparts, they can apply for visas for medical treatment. India's healthcare system, offering advanced treatment at affordable costs, is a popular choice for Pakistani patients. Family reunions. Emotional bonds pull families across borders, even if it takes months of bureaucratic navigation. Cultural or sporting events. Occasionally, artists and athletes traverse borders to participate in cultural exchanges or high-stakes cricket matches. However, these visas often come with restrictions. For instance, visitors may only be permitted in specific cities or regions under constant monitoring. What happens if someone breaks the rules? Here's a stark reality check. Attempting unauthorized travel between these two nations comes with serious consequences. Under Indian law, penalties for unauthorized travel to Pakistan include revocation of your passport, steep fines and potential jail time, permanent blacklisting from international travel. This legal framework is not just about punitive action. It reflects the profound mistrust between the two governments. A ray of hope. Moments of cooperation. Despite the overwhelming tension, there are glimmers of hope. Initiatives like the Kartarpur Corridor show that people-to-people connections can survive, even thrive, amidst political turmoil. Cultural exchanges are another bridge. Indian films are wildly popular in Pakistan, and Pakistani dramas and music have a loyal fan base in India. These shared cultural passions hint at a yearning for understanding, even amidst strained relations. Are there other restricted countries? While Pakistan often dominates the conversation about restricted travel, it is by no means the only destination where Indian citizens face significant barriers. Political tensions, security concerns, and complex international relations can make travel to certain countries difficult or even dangerous. Let's take a closer look at these destinations, exploring not only the challenges but also the unique factors that contribute to their restricted status. 1. North Korea, a mystery wrapped in isolation. North Korea, often referred to as the Hermit Kingdom, is infamous for its strict isolationist policies. For Indian citizens, and indeed most of the world, travel to North Korea is riddled with challenges. Strict government control. Travelers are heavily monitored by government-appointed guides at all times. Wandering alone or interacting with locals without approval is strictly forbidden. Limited access points. The country has very few international connections. Most visitors enter through Beijing, as direct flights to Pyongyang from other countries are rare or non-existent. Political risks. North Korea's political environment can be unpredictable. Diplomatic disputes with other nations, including India, could escalate suddenly, leaving travelers stranded or in legal jeopardy. While Indian citizens can technically visit North Korea under guided tours, the experience is far from a typical vacation. Every move is scrutinized, and the possibility of misunderstandings turning into serious consequences looms large. 2. Syria, a land of historical grandeur marred by conflict. Syria, once a jewel of Middle Eastern history and culture, has been ravaged by years of civil war and conflict. Indian citizens face significant risks if they choose to travel here. Active war zones. Large parts of the country remain under the control of militant groups or in the throes of active conflict. This makes it one of the most dangerous places in the world to visit. Humanitarian crisis. Infrastructure, including hospitals and transportation systems, is severely damaged. Travelers may find themselves without access to basic necessities. Terrorism threats. The presence of extremist groups heightens the risk of kidnapping, violence, or worse for foreign nationals. While Syria's incredible cultural and historical sites, like the ancient city of Palmyra, are a draw for some, the ongoing violence ensures that travel advisories strongly discourage visits. 3. Afghanistan. A nation in turmoil. For Indian citizens, Afghanistan presents a deeply complex situation. Once a hub of cultural exchanges and historic connections, the nation has been mired in instability for decades. Taliban takeover. Following the Taliban's return to power in 2021, Afghanistan has faced a humanitarian and security crisis. Foreign travelers, particularly those from nations perceived as unfriendly, face heightened risks. Lack of governance. Basic governance structures, including law enforcement and judicial systems, are either weak or non-existent in many regions. This makes it difficult for foreign travelers to ensure their safety. Potential for escalation. The security situation remains fluid, with sporadic outbreaks of violence and clashes between various factions. For Indian citizens, Afghanistan represents a paradox, a land of shared history and cultural ties, but one where travel is perilous due to the current political climate. 4. Yemen, a hidden humanitarian crisis. Yemen, like Syria, is a country rich in history but devastated by prolonged conflict. For Indian travelers, the risks are stark. Ongoing civil war. The fighting between various factions, compounded by foreign interventions, has created a highly unstable environment. Humanitarian emergencies. Yemen is experiencing one of the world's worst humanitarian crises, with widespread famine, disease outbreaks, and lack of basic healthcare. Logistical challenges. Airports and major transport routes are often non-operational or controlled by warring groups, making access almost impossible. While Yemen may not be legally restricted for Indian travelers, it is strongly advised against due to these overwhelming risks. 5. Ukraine, conflict zones. A contemporary case. Ukraine has been in the headlines due to its ongoing conflict with Russia, particularly following the invasion in early 2022. Indian citizens are advised to avoid travel to conflict zones within Ukraine. Though travel to safer regions of Ukraine is possible, the overall environment makes the country a challenging destination for Indian citizens. 6. Other notable examples. Apart from these prominent examples, there are several other nations where travel complications exist for Indian citizens, though not all are explicitly restricted. Libya. Years of civil war have left the country unstable, with a high risk of violence and kidnapping. Somalia. Known for its lawlessness and piracy, Somalia remains a high-risk zone for foreign travelers. Iran. While not explicitly restricted, diplomatic tensions and internal unrest can make travel to Iran complex for Indian nationals at certain times. Advisories versus restrictions. What's the difference? It's important to distinguish between outright legal restrictions, like those affecting travel to Pakistan, and strong advisories. The latter typically stem from safety concerns rather than direct prohibitions. For example, Indian citizens are advised not to travel to active conflict zones like Syria and Yemen due to the inherent risks. However, there is no legal penalty for doing so if they choose to take the risk. Countries like North Korea fall into a gray area, where travel is technically allowed but fraught with difficulties that discourage most people. Advisories versus restrictions. What's the difference? It's important to distinguish between outright legal restrictions, like those affecting travel to Pakistan, and strong advisories. The latter typically stem from safety concerns rather than direct prohibitions. For example, Indian citizens are advised not to travel to active conflict zones like Syria and Yemen due to the inherent risks. However, there is no legal penalty for doing so if they choose to take the risk. Countries like North Korea fall into a gray area, where travel is technically allowed but fraught with difficulties that discourage most people. What could the future hold? Imagine a future where borders are mere lines on a map, not barriers in the heart. While the current travel restrictions may feel insurmountable, history shows us that change is possible. People on both sides of the border share deep cultural roots, familial ties, and a common hope for peace. Could these commonalities pave the way for a more open future? To make progress, both nations must foster trust, starting with small steps. Encouraging cultural exchanges, opening additional visa categories, and avoiding inflammatory rhetoric are all pathways to a better tomorrow. What can travelers learn? The India-Pakistan travel conundrum is as much a tale of separation as it is of connection. For the modern traveler, it's a reminder of the profound ways in which history and geopolitics shape our journeys. While we celebrate the freedom to travel, it's also important to recognize and respect the complexities of restricted travel zones. What do you think about this sensitive issue? Do you believe travel restrictions should be eased to allow more cross-border interaction? Or do the political realities make such dreams impractical? Share your thoughts in the comments below.